Hi, everybody. My name is Brad Richard, and I wanted to start off today with a story. The talk today that I'm going to give to you is "Find Your Light," and I have the background to kind of emphasize that. But I want to dedicate today to my father, and I want to start off with a story about my father and about his passing. And so let's get started with that. And it all started. The story begins that my father was in the ICU unit, and and he had fallen, and he had bleeding in his brain from a fall that he took in his nursing home, and he had bleeding in his brain, and the doctors had set up a meeting with myself and my whole family. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and I am the baby of 10. And so all 10 of us were there along with my mother, and we had a conference with his doctors, and the doctors explained to us during that meeting that they were in a kind of a dilemma. They could not operate on my father and control the bleeding in his brain because he also had an obstruction in his heart. One side of his heart was obstructed 80%, and one side of his heart was had 20%, was flowing 20%. And they stated to us that he could not survive a brain surgery, nor could he survive a uh, a heart surgery. And they recommended to me and my family that we make the decision to let him pass peacefully. After a lot of deliberation and conversations and discussions amongst myself, my mother, and my siblings, the decision was made to let him go. And they moved him to a hospice room within the hospital. They were arranging plans to move him to a hospice room back in his nursing home. And the night before I was scheduled to fly back home. Um, I spent several hours in a adjacent room to his, and talked with some of my siblings, and we just kind of reflected on his life, and there wasn't anything that I could do, and I wasn't able to stay any longer, so it was time for me to fly back home. But the night before, late into the night, early morning, I went into his room, into his hospice room, to say my last goodbyes to him. And I put my hand on his forehead, and I told him that I loved him, and that his little buddy, that was his nickname for me, his little buddy, and told him that his little buddy would be okay, and that we would take care of mom for him, and that we would take good care of her, and that it was okay for him to go and find his light, is what I told him. I told him that he needed to let go, and and not worry about any of us, and that I would be okay, and I gave him permission to pass on and to find his light. And I put that in my message to him, and the last words that I told him, for a specific reason. Um, he led a life of non-expression. He didn't show his love, and he didn't really express his feelings and emotions to any of his children, including me, as well as to my mother. And he really lived inward. He never understood um, his dreams and his goals. He never really embraced who he was as a man, and he had a lot of negative thinking. At sometimes his thinking was very delusional, and he was very accusatory, and he blamed a lot of people for a lot of things that happened in his life. And so I told him to go find his light and to find himself and learn to love himself when he passed on to his heavenly existence. So at that point, I left the room and said goodbye to all of my relatives and said goodbye to my mother. And on the way home, as I was sitting, I had a window seat in the airplane. And on the way home, it was cloudy. It was cold. I was flying out of Minneapolis. And on the way home, a beam of sunlight came through the window of the airplane. And I looked at all the other windows on the airplane, and I looked at all of the sky, the whole sky that was outside of my window on the airplane, and it was cloudy, and there was only one spot in the clouds that there was a break in the clouds, and the light was shining through that break in the clouds, and it was illuminating the very window that I was sitting in, and my heart and my mind immediately came to the conclusion that was my dad, and he was shining his light on my window and on my airplane for a safe trip for me back home, and that was a very profound point in my life, and it was an emotional experience to have that light shining upon me through the window of that aircraft. When I got home, I expected to hear that he had passed peacefully, and the doctors gave him about 24 to 48 hours. They took him off all the machines, and they basically said that he should pass peacefully in 24 to 48 hours. Well, day after day went by, and I expected to hear that he had passed. And as I got updates day after day, he was still fighting, and he was still refusing to pass. He was scared. And on the 10th day, after living on ice chips and morphine, on the 10th day, he finally gave up the fight and left all of us and moved on. So the message of my story to you is the importance of finding your light while you are here, and you can make a difference in the lives of people around you and the people that you love. The ironic thing of the story, another important aspect of my story to you, is that the way that he passed on, he had bleeding in his brain, and obviously his brain was clouded with blood, and he had a blocked heart, and that represented to me those two causes of his death represented the entirety of his life. He held back his feelings. He held back his emotions. He did not show affection or show love the way most people did. And and because of that, his heart was blocked. And it was a manifestation of how he lived his life, in my opinion. And also, he had a lot of negative thinking, a lot of delusional thinking, and that also was represented by the second condition, and that was the bleeding in his brain. So my message to you is, don't pass on and don't leave this world with your light still inside you. I encourage you, and I beg of you for your best life, that you share your light, you find it, you embrace it, and you make sure that you live every day of your life with your light. It doesn't do anyone any good, especially you yourself, to take that light with you. It needs to be shared with others, and it needs to be expressed in your everyday lives. So that is my message. That is my message to you. And I want the listeners to this talk to be inspired and encouraged. And this message, I share it. I share it for your benefit, but I also share it in honor of my father. And this is my way of making a difference in people's lives for him. He never had a chance to do that. And so this is my way of sharing his message and sharing the lessons that I learned from the passing of my father, and how important it is for all of us to find our light and share it with the world. Please don't die with your light inside you. It's very important. And I believe with all my heart that my father has found his light. My mother did pass away several years after he did, and I'm sure that he found his light and he found his wonderful wife once again in heaven. So that is my message, and I hope you found inspiration in it, and please benefit from this story and from the stifled life that my father lived. And hopefully you can gain some insight and some benefit from my story. So I send love to all the people viewing this message, and I encourage you, find your light, embrace it, and share it with the world. Thank you very much.
Brad, before you leave, do you have a website or email address so people can get in touch with you and tell me more?
Yes, sir. They can visit me at www.bradrichard.net, www.bradrichard.net. I'm an author, speaker, and mentor, and they can find out more information about my services at the website.